it's so funny because when I trained under Dr. Walsh, he showed us the symptoms and traits charts of like what an under-methylated person looks like and what an over-methylated person looks like. And it's so interesting because it's always accurate. And it's
what are those what are those behaviours? What would you see within either of those groups?
Yeah, so for an under-methylated person, it would be a lot of OCD, a lot of rigidity. They might have, like compulsion, like obsessive compulsions, which is obviously OCD. There will be allergies in that person, or at least seasonal allergies, because obviously methylation has an inverse relationship with histamine, because methylation breaks down histamine. So, of course, if you are under-methylated and you're not making those methyl groups very well, you're going to have an increase in histamine. And we know that's a problem for lots of our kids anyway, because we know some gut bugs can create more histamine. They're deficient in some of the cofactors that are required to break down histamine. And a lot of the copper's not bound, and we need that bound to break down histamine, because oxidative stress causes that. And so you'll see that in those people, and it's and they might need a lot of order. And the thing is about that, in terms of like the biochemistry of that, is there's a receptor called the NMDA receptor, and it regulates your glutamate and GABA. And in those people, that is dysregulated. So you can then find that there's more of those sort of obsessive behaviours in those kind of people, because there's an excess of glutamate. Right. And it's just so fascinating. And then if you're over-methylated, and it's so funny because actually, and I don't actually know the science behind this, but typically, not in every person, under-methylated people, because they're very tense, sort of overactive people, you tend to find they're very little and slender. And those people actually, under-methylated people are typically people who are doctors. They're very like type A people. They're like really hyper-focused because of their biochemistry. So actually, it's not always a negative thing. Like it can actually be, for those people, it can be something like it's not always symptomatic, if that makes sense. So, in our kids, that there's layers and layers of other things. And so the under-methylation is more stark, 'cause there's loads more toxicity. There's gut issues, there's like oxidative stress, there's all those things. So in those children, and there'll be infections and like probably brain autoimmunity as well. So in those children, you're going to see those symptoms a lot more stark, and actually they're going to impact their functioning in a really probably more negative way. But actually for somebody who's under-methylated without all of that, it can be really, it's almost like a superpower in some, because they're so hyper-focused that their brain can work so quickly and do so much more than, somebody who is probably normally methylated. So whenever Dr. Walsh runs his training, he always goes around the room and he says, I know I'm sitting in front of a whole group here of under-methylated people, because we're all there going, really like desperate for the detail, and desperate to learn all this stuff. And they're all like really top doctors and like clinicians in their field. And so it's really interesting. And that's obviously, again, where you would see that dynamic of the, that autism spectrum, I suppose, where you're going to get really high functioning people who are under-methylated, who are autistic, and then the people who are very, possibly have a lower functionality, because they've got all the other layers on top that are, crowding out their functioning even more. And then for an over-methylated person, these people you would see struggle with, because if someone's over-methylated, they've got too many methyl groups. So everything's going to be, it's almost like an anxious picture, because everything's running too quickly almost, in that sense. So, and it's so fascinating. Like I'll share like my symptoms and traits chart just for fun, so people can have a look at that themselves.